Welcome back to our series on taking care of our youth. The last time we met, we were looking at the importance of thinking for ourselves and therefore our duty not to conform, which, as we saw in the last instance, was a very widespread and strong temptation. Today we think of a related issue. Let me call it the courage to be different. The question is, do I dare to be different? And I want to state my creed, my article of belief right at the beginning, that to me it is so very fundamental that I claim and exercise for myself the right to be different from others and the right to be true to myself. Now, let us, in order to understand this issue, let's look at some of the patterns that we see at work prevalent all around us. The people that you meet fall into three distinctive categories. And once you know this, it will become very interesting when you relate to people and try to understand them. This is a checklist that you can use. First of all, there are individuals, there are people who look at everything, relate to everything, respond to everything in terms of what we call orthodoxy, in terms of what they have received from the past as wisdom handed down through generations to them. So, they, when faced with a situation in which they have to take a decision or stand, go back in time and try to understand how people in the past dealt with such or similar situations and use their patterns and strategies in negotiating their predicament in the present. So in other words, I live in the present with the resources of the past. Now it's like children of people who are traditionally rich, living off the inherited wealth, family wealth, the wealth accumulated, say, from the time of their great forefathers and down to the time of their immediate parents. So they're living like the camel off the hump, as it were. So past is the guiding principle. The light of the past is a guiding principle for negotiating the present. This is one attitude to life. The second attitude is exactly the opposite. For this group of people, the past does not matter at all. It's only the present. And this is what is called other-directedness. That is, we are directed by the people around us. Now, for example, public opinion plays an important role in this. The media is always in the business of shaping and generating public opinion. That's how people are controlled in our times. So our thinking is completely taken over and taken away from us by the dominant climate of opinion which is generated all around us, and we are colonized by our contemporaries. Some people arrogate to themselves the authority and the wisdom to think, and the rest of us simply lap up whatever they produce. So we are actually mere mass consumers of the ideas and opinions generated by a few people sitting here and there. Now, this is called public opinion. The fact of the matter, if you think for a moment, is that this is not public opinion at all. This is a very private opinion which is then slapped on other people and then it is made public. So it is not your opinion at all. You are a member of the public, but this is certainly not your opinion. This opinion you have derived from others. There is a third group of people, we can call them, say, self-directed. They are different from the first two categories. The first category would go back in time, derive their wisdom and guidelines from the past. The second category would look around and derive their guidelines from the people around. The third category would do something different. They would look into themselves, the self-directed, and they would respond and relate to situations within their insight, within their priorities, their wisdom, their understanding. Now, my point is that there is something to be said in favor of all three, but all three are limited. The past is limited because we have progressed. Public opinion is limited because it is manufactured, and often when something is manufactured, there are vested interests working at the back of it. Thinking in terms of one's own self, one is so very limited, and one is still in the process, especially when we are young, we are in the process of growing and evolving, therefore we don't have adequate wisdom, therefore the extent to which we can actually depend exclusively on ourselves is limited and it's even dangerous. So, over and above these three categories, we can think of a fourth category. And I believe that this fourth category can take care of the limitations and the aberrations in the other three categories. It's all right if you are tradition directed. It's all right if you are public opinion directed. It's all right if you are self-directed. But you need to complement the insights, the patterns, the wisdom, the resources of all these different models with a fourth pattern, which is being God-directed. Now, of course, I know I am saying something not very fashionable. These days, people frown upon the idea of believing in God. But I have to tell you that in my last 65 years of life, particularly in the last half century, that I have been in the midst of a relentless struggle in public life, the only thing that was real, the only thing that sustained me in my struggle, the only thing that enabled me to overcome challenges and turn them into opportunities is my unwavering faith in God. I found inexhaustible resources of wisdom, even common sense, through my relationship with God. And therefore, I felt free to derive my insights from tradition, insights from the opinions all around me, and also whatever little I knew as an individual, but overarching and over and above all of this, I depended on the daily guidance I received from God Almighty, which enabled me to look at the resources derived from the other three models in a better light, and make sure that I was not completely limited by these three models. So, if you really want to protect yourself from being enslaved by the world around you, or remain frozen in time as a votary of a tradition, or being limited in terms of your own narrow little self, there is a way out. And that way out is to lift your spiritual imagination above all these three and to remain open to promptings, to guidance in your daily walk, all through, so that the limitations of all of these other resources and facilities can be overcome. Now, this is my idea of freedom. Now, you might be surprised that I say so. I'll explain this in the next unit. That I have an idea of freedom. Freedom is a matter or a measure of the extent to which you rise above your limitations. I know that each of the three models of dealing with life has serious limitations. And my freedom depends on the extent to which I rise above these limitations. More of that in the next unit. So let's stay together in this journey of discovering what is good for ourselves. Thank you.